Hello to our audience all around the world. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on optimal payment strategy presented by WEX, the payment solution provider to the world's largest online travel agencies. In this webinar today, we'll discuss how better technology and data can help travel managers and agencies shift from being expensive gatekeepers to becoming cost-saving consultants. It's time to tame the data monster. You can do this. We'll show you how to get in touch with your superhero powers. We also have a solid and useful supporting set of information from data professional Grasp Technology. We'll share practical actions that you can take with your own business to save money. I'm Sean O'Neill, editor of T-News in the Philadelphia area. I'm joined by Gene Quinn, CEO of T-News in Connecticut. We'll be introducing our presenters very shortly, but just a bit of housekeeping. 3 things. First, T-News is recording today's webinar and will make a replay available to you along with the slides. So if you can't attend for the full hour, you will receive the video and the slides by email afterward. You will also be able to share the links with your colleagues so that if you want to convince people internally to make some changes or follow up on some of the data that we release, you'll be able to go back and refer to the statistics and the good information. Second, we'll be having a question and answer period at the end. When you have a question, please use the box on your dashboard and type your question in. You'll see it as a drop-down menu in your GoToWebinar panel. I'll be happy to share those questions with our panelists later on in the show. Third and last thing, we're asking some poll questions of the audience today so that we can adjust our presentation to better match the type of audience we have. So please answer the questions using your GoToWebinar tool. Our first poll today is, where are you located? If you can let us know if you're in North America or Europe, Latin America or Asia Pacific. I realize with the time difference, I'm suspecting a lot of people will be coming from North America, Europe, and India, but we will also have people watching the replay and seeing the slides who've signed up to register for it, even though they can't attend at this hour. Will be coming on later. So if we could see those poll results, it looks like 2/3 of us are from North America today. About 1 in 4 of us are in Europe, and we have some of us from Latin America and Asia Pacific. Thank you, everyone, wherever you are in the world. We really appreciate you taking the time. We think there's going to be some good information today. Our second question before we start is, which industry segment do you represent? So if you can let us know, are you a tech solution provider? Are you an airline, transportation, hospitality, or other supplier? Are you an OTA, travel agency, or tour operator, packager? If you're a TMC or a corporate buyer, if you could let us know, that way our panelists, Jim and Dave, can tailor their presentation a bit in response to make sure we're hitting the key points. So it looks like we have a good representation from travel management companies today, with about 41% of you. 27% of our participants are from technology solution providers. About 16% are from OTAs, travel agencies, tour operators. But whether you're a supplier, an agency, or a tech solutions person, we think you're going to have a lot of good information out of this presentation today. We've aimed to have a big, broad landscape. So leading our presentation today is Jim McGowan, U.S. Business Development at WEX. He's joining us from Portland, Maine. We also have Dave Lucas from Columbus, Ohio, where Grasp Technologies is based. And he'll be speaking to us a little bit later. So I now turn the presentation over to Jim at WEX.
Thank you, Sean. And I'd also like to thank T-News for putting on this session. For today's discussion, Dave Lucas and I will cover the following topics. We'll do some quick introductions, also talk about who we are, the state of travel business, get into big data, also how you become a superhero, what is GraspPay, and then we will move on to some questions. Next slide, Sean. So real quickly, I'll just give a quick overview of WEX. Again, my name is Jim McGowan. I'm a business development manager focused in the travel industry. WEX is a global leader in corporate payment solutions, and we simplify the complexities of payment systems across continents and industries, including fleet, health, and travel. We have over 16 years experience in the travel industry specifically with our virtual card solution, and currently process over $20 billion in annual travel payments over 200, and it's in 200 countries where our virtual card has been processed. What really sells us apart or sets us apart in the industry is our ability to deliver innovative solutions where we really bring customer pain points to the drawing table and design solutions that address those problems. So that is our focus at WEX, is on the corporate payment landscape. And I'll go ahead now and turn it over to Dave so he can give an introduction.
Thanks, Jim. If you guys could move to the next slide. Great, thanks. Dave Lucas, I'm the Vice President CSO of GRAS Technologies. Just want to reiterate as well, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and Tino's as well. Some of you might have heard of GRAS. GRAS, we've been around a little over 20 years. We're really known as the leader in global travel data management and consolidation needs. We're the largest provider of travel reporting and business intelligence commercially throughout the world for T&E. And we work with really the whole gamut. We work with TMCs, corporations, governments, consortia, other technology vendors use us to move a lot of data for them. But 70% of the top 50 TMCs are GRASP clients, and obviously many others throughout the world. We do over $50 billion in transactions through our systems per year, and service clients in over 100 countries. So been doing it a long time, and invented a lot of the unique ways to manage data from all over the world, cleanse, normalize, enrich it, and give you the best data set, and then help you get the intelligence you need and more real-time data to be able to really action it and make a difference.
All right, Dave, thanks for that introduction. Yep. Thank you, Dave. So talking about business travel, it's rising slowly but steadily, and GBTA actually expects global business travel, or just travel in general, to grow 3 to 5%. The global economy, though shaken up briefly by Brexit, is on the rebound. Fuel prices are down, and it's easier to justify travel time now that a salesperson can be productive while sitting on a plane. So technology continues to shrink the world. I mean, if you think about it, emailing with people in 5 different countries every day is commonplace. Attending virtual conferences and webinars like this one are now the norm. Teleconferencing with somebody on the other side of the world isn't novel anymore. So what really makes that difference is showing up face to face, and you remember the person who took the time to come and visit you and shake your hand. Now, at the same time, you can bet that the CFO of any corporation is going to want to make sure we didn't spend too much on a trip and that we can point to some sort of return on that investment. So you think, what's so hard about that, right? Well, making decisions without data are dangerous. So our world is filled with more information than ever before, and there's no excuse for making a bad decision due to a lack of data. And Sean, can you move to the next slide? If you think about it, when we buy a book or a sofa or a car or a home, we gather data first. We look at the reviews, we get the details about the product, maybe look at the seller's reputation, but yet companies' second biggest expense doesn't get the same amount of analysis as even a book or a sofa when you look at it. Now why not? So, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk about some of the current system shortcomings.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so no conversation can be had about any of this without discussing our crazy industry, right? We live in the wild west of data. There are no standards for anything. It's a free-for-all. People do whatever they want to do. And for those TMCs on the call, I'm not even going to go into the 1,000+ UDIDs that we can have fun with and put things in different places. So really, when you look at the whole total landscape, corporations' second largest, most controllable expense is their T&E spend. And obviously, corporations spend an endless amounts of time planning, creating policy, trying to police this area of business, and a lot of times most are still not happy with the results. And the biggest reason for this is that T&E data, as I mentioned, is incredibly disparate and disjointed. We have very little data standards. We're wrought with different platforms that we use to manage T&E, many of which, they really do not connect or integrate easily. And further to that, each and every corporation is different in their strategy on how to manage and get the most ROI out of T&E. So there's really no standard set method for success that exists that can be portable from one organization to the next. And so making the most out of a T&E program is really an incredibly intimate and specific thing to that program. It does all start with the data. If a corporation cannot bring together all of their spend, so at minimum TMC, expense, credit card, maybe even things like corporate hierarchy, they're really at a disadvantage as they're missing the relationships between the data sets, and thus really that opportunity to manage T&E. So those that try do it trying to piece data together from different systems manually. And manually doing this typically takes an enormous amount of time, energy, money, and for most is not timely enough to action the data. And so further to that, it's also for a lot of people a very manual process, right? And you have to deal with human error. So the last piece is really that timeliness, right? If you can't get the data timely enough to make those decisions and really turn them into ROI, then you waste a lot of time and no significant improvement is made. So, and then that other challenge that people have is marrying that specific travel policy for that corporation with data to make sure it's being followed. So that's our landscape. That's the world we live in. So what do we do about it? So if you don't mind, can we go to the next slide, please? So we're surrounded by data. As Jim said, we're surrounded by data. More data has been created in the past 2 years than in the entire previous history of the human race. That's amazing. Within 5 years, there'll be over 50 billion smart connected devices in the world, all developed to collect and share data. Retailers who leverage the full power of this big data could really increase operating margins as much as 50 or 60%, and less than 0.5% of all data is ever analyzed and used, right? So, retailers aren't sitting around saying, who needs another 60%? They're saying, how do we get to the information we need and what do we do with it? And in our space, especially in the T&E space, there's an incredible amount of data, being produced on a daily basis. And so that takes us to poll number 3, I believe, Sean.
Yes, that's right. The question is, what is the biggest obstacle in controlling business travel costs? What is your biggest obstacle in controlling business travel costs? Is it that employees ignore or bypass corporate traveler policy? Is it difficulty in negotiating special pricing from suppliers? Is it data isn't available on one single system, or on any, or you're missing a particular bit of data, or lack of controls for travel manager? It'd be really interesting to see what the results are from our attendees and listeners today. It seems like many of our participants are saying that the biggest obstacle in controlling business travel costs they see is that data isn't available on one system. Another major concern is that employees ignore or bypass corporate travel policy. And then there's lack of controls for travel manager and some difficulty negotiating special pricing for suppliers. So that's a kind of interesting results, I believe. I'm going to toss it back to Dave.
And I'm really not surprised by those results, right? Everybody wants to get all the data that they have into one place, right? And we're going to talk about that here in a second. To kind of round up the point we just made and get into really hurting the data, it really does. When it comes down to it, data without decisions is meaningless, right? So bringing all the data together is great, but you have to be able to decision on it. So you can read the slide, and there's, it's funny, but that happens a lot, right? After careful consideration, 437 charts, 613 graphs, 72 spreadsheets. We need to run some more reports, right? So you get that analysis paralysis. And so what we want to do today, and we're going to shift gears into that now, is talk about not only herding the data, but really how you can take this down to a very specific level and get a difference and get it very quickly in your world. So if you don't mind, Sean, let's go to the next slide. Perfect. So yeah, let's talk about herding data, right? There are 5 areas that you want to focus on when you're bringing your data together, right? You want to have it as close to real time as possible. You want to have it as transparent as possible, meaning you want your accuracy as good as you possibly can get it. You want to be able to benchmark with it for those that do benchmark. You want to be able to look at the trends, right? In our world today, we're getting to a point where we are starting to see AI come in and other things where we can do really good predictive analytics based on trends that are happening and take advantage of them. And the last thing is more traditional, right? Monitoring. We're monitoring what's happening. We're making decisions off of that. And as it says, the benefits of big data can't happen without consolidating the data. So at a minimum, you need to be looking at, if you're a corporation, consolidating all your TMC data, all of your credit card data, and all of your expense data together. A lot of corporations are bringing HR hierarchy on top of that so that you can report by cost center and that sort of thing. Now, just bringing it together is one thing. But even more importantly is making sure that whatever partners you're working with is that you have a way to get it as timely as possible. And we're aware of the challenges around the world, right? We know that some areas of the world, it's just not that easy to get data, every day or even weekly in some aspects, or, and that sort of thing. But you can work with each of your partners. And if your technology partner that you're working with for the, helping you do this is experienced, they should have developed ways to improve that for you. And so you really want to explore that with them. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, okay, you brought the data together. How do you have that accuracy and that transparency? You really have to understand that different areas of the world operate differently. You need to obviously normalize your data, so you need to be able to normalize it across these different data sets, meaning that you need to line up things and map things and do that. And that will be done by your partner. If you have a really good technology partner, a lot of us know Grasp. We do this all around the world. We do it for Fortune 500s every day, and it's not easy. Anybody who tells you that it is lying to you, but it's worth it in the end. If your data accuracy is 20% and your partner can take you to 80%, it's a whole new world for you, right? So there's everybody has their own proprietary methods for it, and that's something to really investigate. From the benchmarking standpoint, that really comes into play when you want to benchmark against whether yourself or like industries and things like that. So you have to make that determination. Are you going to benchmark against like-sized programs and industries, or are you going to benchmark on yourself? Are you going to improve against your own metrics? And that's a question that you have to have. When it comes to trends are becoming very important. And so you want to be able to identify and be very clear on the trends that you do want to follow and that you do want to try to do predictive analytics off of. One of the biggest challenges for people when they consolidate data is that they don't get clarity in the beginning of what they want. They just do it. And so one of the things I caution anyone on is that if you're going to go down this road, and you really should, in today's age it's becoming a necessity, not a nice to have, is you need to take a step back and get crystal clear on what you want to accomplish and work with your partners to even define that out if needed. And then the last thing is the monitoring side. What things do you want to measure? What things are going to make the biggest difference? The 80-20 rule. Everybody's program is different. And so what are the 20% of items that are going to generate 80% of the results that you want to manage? And so on the corporate side, that's what you're looking at. And your partners are the TMCs and these other different data sources for you. So from a TMC standpoint, these are the same things that you want to be talking with your clients, you want to be helping them with, using your partners for, and so on. So that's really herding the right data, right? So let's go on to the next slide, Sean. All right, so you've herded all your data, you've got it together, you put this enormous amount of effort into cleansing it, normalizing it, making sure that it's as good as it can be. Now take a step back and focus. Don't try to take all the benefits that you think's in that data and do them all at once, right? focus on the specific area, one specific area, pick one and focus on that and get really good at it. So that 80-20 rule, maybe you've identified 3 or 4 things, pick one of them and really exhaust it to its fullest and get the benefits of it. That's where a lot of people have get a challenge. They get this massive data set, they've got it all together, and they say to themselves, gosh, we can do so much. And what happens is they really become a jack of all trades and a master of none because they try to do everything and they don't get the benefits. So pick one area, get really good at that, get that where you want it, then move on to the next one. And with that, Jim, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dave. So talking again about the data and focusing a little bit more on that poll question number 3. So what are the biggest obstacles in controlling business travel costs? I'm also not surprised to see that data in one source, as well as travelers going outside of the policy being two of the biggest areas of concern. So what I'd like to focus on, and as Dave mentioned, is, your biggest bang for your buck, or focusing on one area. One way to do that is obviously through your card program, and leveraging the virtual capabilities that are now available in the card industry. So, with the right virtual card program, you can increase control and compliance for your corporate travel policy, gain efficiencies and process savings while making better decisions. And if you look from a control and compliance standpoint, there's virtually eliminates risk and fraud, but really the efficiency and process savings, you can get a one-to-one reconciliation between your reservation and that single virtual card. Plus, you can capture additional data at the front end of the transaction. So when the booking is happening, you're generating this virtual card and you're adding data elements to that request. And that could be data elements that help you either better track the suppliers, or it can be data that helps you in your financial reconciliation or posting those transactions later on. Dispute resolution becomes much easier. So those are big benefits of the virtual card. And in addition, since you're generating that virtual card payment, you're keeping your travelers within your corporate policy. They can't go outside of that use case to then book air or hotel or whatever that may be. So that really helps. So, taking a look at that and getting the right virtual program can definitely let you know how much you're spending and where you're spending it. Get the one-to-one reconciliation to better tie individual trips to sales, and make the most of the user-defined fields that attach directly to the payment. And again, those are additional data elements that you wouldn't get with a standard physical corporate card program. And each provider may have different levels of data they can capture, or amount of data, but that should be available on a good virtual card program, which again will help with the efficiency and the process of the reconciliation. If you can go to the next slide. Now, putting a good program in place or having that support can definitely help you go from a gatekeeper to a travel superhero. Now, if you look at these, are a lot of the things that people do today: policing expenses, dictating limited supplier lists, chasing down receipts. So travel managers spend most of their time trying to enforce the company's travel policy. So the role's seen more as a gatekeeper rather than a resource for employees. But we're hoping when you take that data and make some of these changes, that you become that travel consultant superhero. And there are so many aspects to travel management, and we're aware of that. But these are some of the big benefits for bringing all of your data together. Have the time to be proactive rather than reactive. Drive better supplier negotiations. Persuade your employees to comply with policy. Protect the company from card fraud, and give precise data for the I and the ROI. One of the easiest things to manage and get the most bang for your buck, as we've mentioned, is really managing your card spend. And Sean, I believe we have one last poll question.
Yeah, that's right. One last poll question. What data would you like to see in one place? In our previous poll, about half of you said that, the biggest obstacle you face is that all the information is not in one place. So what data would you like to see in one place? Is it traveler information, trip information, T&E card information, vendor information, or APAR account information? Again, what data would you like to see in one place in your system? So it looks like about a third of you would like to see trip information, and another third would like to see travel and expense card information. 17% would like traveler information, with 11% would like APAR account information, and some would like vendor information. So I think that's what exactly do you make of that, Dave? Is that kind of poll result?
I think that goes with what we were just talking about earlier. In order to do that, you've got to consolidate the different data sets because they live independently. You'll have some elements with your TMC, some with your card, some in expense. And so you've got to really, those three legs of the stool you have to really get that data all in one place. And then obviously you have your partners in technology providers that help you tie the data across those different data sets to show the relationships of it and everything. That's really the goal.
Okay, that helps. That makes sense. Okay, I'll turn it over to you to continue your presentation, Dave.
Yeah, sure. So as Jim said, talking about focusing on one area, one of the areas that we've identified that is one of the easiest to do and really start right now and get the biggest bang for your buck is on that card side, right? And one of the biggest challenges with card outside of air has been reconciling that data and getting the complete data set around that. And so virtual cards solve that problem because they're a one-to-one reconciliation. So if you book a hotel on a virtual card, it's one-to-one, it's reconciled, right? And then there's the data that goes with it. So that really helps you to get that control over your data. And so this is one of the areas that we've really focused on. And so if you aren't looking at virtual cards or you're considering virtual cards, this is one area where you can really gain some of that efficiency and that control and really get that ROI in a very quick and easy way. So that experience for us and being in this industry for a long time and listening to clients is how we came about with GrassPay, which a lot of you have heard in the marketplace. So whenever we do a solution at Grasp and with our partners like WEX and some of the others that we work with, one of the things we always try to do is look at how can we really take this to the next level. How can we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Who, kind of pioneered it. How do we, come in and be able to provide a better overall model, better overall experience, and really take a lot of hassle out of it or make things easier for the client. And so if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we did that with GrassPay. So really turning the model upside down, some main points with how GrassPay works is zero transaction setup costs. It's free to you. And so this is something that's really unique, obviously, in the industry. And we thank our partner WEX and others that we worked with for making concessions to make this happen, right? We had to be able to say, hey, we're going to have to do some things on our own. We're going to have to take on some burden of costs and stuff to be able to make that happen for clients. But we firmly believe that everyone should have the protection and the efficiencies of virtual cards in the marketplace. Whether you spend $200,000 a year or $2 billion, you should be able to have this protection. And so that was the reasoning for coming up with that model. The other thing was, and Grasp is known for this, we've always been kind of like Switzerland in the marketplace. We work with everybody. We're not exclusive to anyone. And so we wanted to have an independent solution that wasn't tied to any platform or anything like that to make it easy and portable for our clients, because we know clients are using different systems all the time. And so we have GDS independence. So we work in all the different GDSs. And one of the really unique things that you might have seen, it hit the news wires this morning, it just came out today, it's a big announcement, is that we are now the first and only provider that has a seamless, touchless solution for virtual cards that integrates directly with Concur. And so if you're a Concur user or you have clients that are Concur users that are looking to use virtual cards at the point of sale when their travelers are booking, there's now a seamless touchless solution that allows you to do that. So again, a first for the industry. The other thing we want to do is make it easy to adopt, right? We didn't want to have extra technology or a bunch of IT resources. We wanted to make it as easy as being able to really integrate and start this up within a couple weeks. And so we do all that, and you don't have to change any workflows or anything like that in what you do. Multi-currency, multi-travel types, and in the end, it's that travel expertise and working with clients all over the world and hearing their pains over the years with that data management expertise and then virtual cards all coming together into one. You can go to the next slide. Sean, you can go to the next slide. And so talking about listening to the clients, one of the things we want to do is make something customizable and configurable to each scenario that our clients will have. So you have customization, when to be able to send a fax to the hotel. You have notification, so automatic email notification on failed faxes. P&R data and reporting real time. So those that you want to get that real time data and you want it to bring together with your other data, you have that real time P&R data available at your fingertips as soon as you do a transaction. And then nightly it's reconciled. So you have the card data and the travel data right there every day. Traveler copy. The travelers get a copy of the fax. They don't have to download an app or anything like that. They get a PDF copy straight sent to their email. The exact same thing the hotel has, the traveler has. And that avoids those issues at check-in. You have a robust BI suite. So, a bunch of really nice reports to help you with that trending and that analysis and that modeling, if you will, as well as predictive, right? So you have all that with it. And then obviously the data capture, it captures all the P&R data, including cost allocation fields, such as you did and remarks as well. So it really is kind of a complete solution with a different model that allows you to even try it out, doesn't cost you anything to adopt, and has really made a difference in the industry for a lot of clients. So with that, Jim, I'll turn it back over to you for the next slide.
Thanks again, Dave. So really just wrapping things up before we get into questions, and I'll turn it back over to Dave for his final points as well. But what I would suggest to the group that's on the phone today or joining this session is really to pick one item to focus on. And, I think Dave and I are trying to talk about data and then how managing your corporate card program in a different way than you do today could be that initial step. But keep in mind that in the past, I'm sure when people have looked into virtual cards or other types of technologies, there were a lot of challenges because the integration points weren't there. There's been a lot of work done in the industry, and there's been a lot of players that have thought about and taken the feedback from the industry to make things, address the concerns that you have about managing your corporate program, getting the data, having more control, and doing it all in one integrated solution that is not hard for you to implement. So I'd encourage you to get out there and look at some of that new technology and new advancements that are available to the corporate clients, TMCs, and others to really take your corporate program to that next level. So that would be my suggestion for the group, and hopefully we'll have some questions and some ability to correspond together at the end of this. So Dave?
And the takeaway for me, for everyone, is, as you can see, we've talked a lot about this stuff today. You do need to bring all your data together. And it is a process, and it takes some time. The first thing I would tell you is take a step back and get clarity of purpose, clarity on what you want to do, clarity on what you want to see, and that really will help your partners that you work with in being able to craft the right solution for you. So make sure you get the clarity. The second thing is make the commitment. Okay, when you bring all the data together from these different sources, it takes some time, it takes some work. You'll reap the benefits of it in the back end, but you just understand you got to have a commitment to do it. The third thing is then focus on those specific areas. It really a lot of pick that one area once you brought it together and then focus on it. For us, the thing that we're seeing clients get the biggest bang for the buck in, if you will, is really attacking the card spend and attacking it with virtual cards. It really eliminates a lot of the issues and problems, headaches, as well as time that is spent in managing your data. So that's one area that if you haven't focused on, really investigate, see if it's right for you, and take some time to focus there. And then go on from there. There is untapped potential in the data that you have. And you will reap the benefits for years to come if you really focus on doing that and have that good clarity with it. So reach out to us if you have any questions. WEX, anyone, we're happy to help. We put a lot of things out in the industry for you. T News is an amazing source for that. So don't think you have to go it alone. Reach out, ask for help, ask for best practices. There's a lot of people willing to give it to you. So thank you.
And thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jim. We have some questions from the audience. For anyone who wants to ask questions, please use the question box and type in your question, and we'll address it to the panel. Werner Janssen is asking, when using virtual cards for hotel stays, how does one ensure that hotels actually refund the original charge when a reservation is subsequently canceled? Jim, maybe you want to try to tackle that first.
Yeah, sure. So unlike a physical plastic or a static card that has a set credit limit, as an example, let's say $5,000, you could have multiple bookings under that. So with a virtual card, you create the one virtual card for that stay, and it's tied to the reservation number. So when the hotel goes to charge that card back, let's say if it was a refund, they'd have that card on file. And even though the card is now closed, since it was a single use card, the refund will go back to that original card number. And also, when you see the refund, you're going to get all of those data elements that were originally captured up front. So you'll know exactly what that refund was for, what virtual card, what booking. If it's a cancellation, it really depends on the provider. But most providers have a cancellation method. So even though a virtual card's been delivered, within the system, you can go in once a reservation's been canceled and just cancel the card. So this way, if the hotel tries to charge it, they'll get a decline. So there's a couple ways to manage that.
Okay. Werner's also asking, with zero transaction costs and zero setup costs, are existing corporate card rebates impacted?
No, rebates are still available. That's one of the things and one of the reasons we chose WEX as a partner in this is because they're willing to work with that. So rebate programs all still exist out there. It's obviously different areas of the world have different rebate programs based on the interchange and that sort of thing, but that's all still available to clients.
Okay. Sandeep is asking, can you have ancillary spend at hotels added to the virtual card or integrated into the data capture?
When I hear ancillary spend, I think of things like movies or different things that you order at the hotel or get at the hotel once you're there. With the virtual card, you can set limits on that. So, for example, I can say room and tax only for $300, and that's all they can spend. But I could also say room and tax plus 20% for any incidentals, which they have that extra 20% to spend on meals and that sort of thing. So if they are spending that, you can get that ancillary spend. The question is going to be, and this really depends on the hotel provider and the data that is going to come back to WEX to be able to get that level 3 to be able to identify it as a meal or just additional charges at the hotel. And that's kind of hit and miss. Jim, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. It really kind of depends on the merchant, right?
You're correct, Dave. I mean, level 3 data really is dependent on the network. Obviously, since we're able to capture some data on the front end, as well as, when you're talking the GrassPay solution, a lot of that P&R data, the data that you get is going to be much richer, but specifically for those instances when you want ancillary charges, whether you're going to get an itemized list of what those were will depend on what level of detail you get back from the hotel through the card network. But as Dave mentioned, since these are issued for that booking, you can have a general corporate card program that has set controls, but you can make adjustments per virtual card So in most cases, if you want it just room and tax, that's fine. But if you do have situations where you want it to be an increase of, 20% or 50% or some other way to calculate that, that's available as well per booking. So it's very flexible in its capabilities.
If Faye is asking that if we have grass pay, Dave, what does the traveler carry in their wallet for meals and incidentals?
Well, they're typically going to carry, they'll have their physical plastic or anything like that. If you have added on, again, to the hotel stay, as Jim and I just talked about, and said, okay, you have an extra 20% to spend at this hotel, then they can just put it on as a room charge to the hotel and charge that to the room. And again, that card, when it's out, it'll get declined from there on. But let's say they have $100, that's your 20% for this hotel stay to spend. They have $100 to spend, basically put on their room, if you will. So it's going to depend on your program and how you do things and how you want to manage that. A lot of programs will use the virtual card to really ensure travelers follow policy and ensure that they are spending the way that you want them to. And so they won't give them essentially that physical plastic to spend as they want to. They'll say, hey, you spend with the card we provided for that hotel, and here's the X amount that you have extra to spend. Once you're out, you're out. So manage it accordingly. So it really, some of that depends on the policy. Some of that depends on how you manage a program. But the elements are there, especially in the hotel space, to be able to not have to use physical plastic for it. You can use the virtual card.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave.
And this is Jim. I just wanted to add to that a little bit. And I think the industry will eventually begin progressing in that area. But if you really look at the virtual card, it's more supplier specific. So, if you go to a restaurant today, obviously not at the hotel where you can charge it to your room, most of the restaurants are just not equipped or familiar with accepting a virtual card. So it's not that the technology isn't necessarily available to be able to generate a virtual card for a traveler to give to, a restaurant for payment. It's just that really technology hasn't gotten into that segment yet. So I think in the future we'll see that, a lot of that ancillary spend will also, be done on a virtual card. But today the major focus is on the biggest piece of spend that your corporate travel program has, which is typically air, hotel, car rental. And like Dave said, as most folks, will have some type of physical plastic if they're not, having travelers do some type of reimbursement or using their own funds for, meals and that type of thing. So, I think we'll see more and more of that in the future. But it's really getting the suppliers at those locations familiar with virtual cards, comfortable, and the mechanism to process those.
Last point to this, because it is a big topic. There will come a day where plastic doesn't exist anymore. It'll all be virtual. You guys see Apple Pay, Android Pay, all that stuff. The only difference with that is it's still your full credit card number. It's still your full credit card line if you want on the back end, right? If you have a $10,000 limit on a credit card and you have it on Apple Pay, you still have that whole thing. And if somebody was to somehow hack that, they can get to that whole credit line. The next evolution of that is, how do you get that virtual card right then and there on your iPhone or your phone to pay for that meal or whatever it is. And that's the next evolution, and that's why you hear a lot about tokenization and stuff in the marketplace. That's coming for sure.
Okay, we have another question about some parts of the world. Hotels like to receive a fax for the hotel stays. How does the payment for hotel stays work? Does that require a lot of extra work on behalf of the TMCs? Will we see faxes of cards to hotels replaced by something more 21st century like?
Well, GrassPay fully automates that now, so that you don't have to do it as a TMC or client anymore. So when you go and do a booking, GrassPay automatically sends the fax to the hotel on your behalf. Unfortunately, we're still very archaic in a lot of ways. The vision that we at GrassPay for the future is, yes, we want to direct connect in all the hotel systems to automatically insert the data in there. And we're working actually with some partners to get some first adopters and test that, because is we have technology that can do that. But we're still a long, long way off, I would say, from that being prevalent across the world. And there are some areas of the world where the technology just isn't up to speed to do it. So that is definitely a dream and a vision that is out there. But the nice thing about GrassPay is it was designed to take that burden off of manually faxing and everything. And that's the nice thing about the virtual card is that out of cyberspace, a front and back of card is created, put on a fax, and sent. One of the reasons that we really liked partnering with WEX, and some of you may know this, is that the OTAs, Expedia, Priceline, and all these different major OTAs have been using WEX for virtual cards since the early 2000s. And so the WEX fax is one of the most predominantly used in the marketplace and recognized by hotel providers. And as such, it's allowed us to have a really good rate of acceptance, very little rejection, where a lot of others get higher rejection rates. And so, Jim, that's kudos to you and the WEX team. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about that.
I just agree with you, Dave, that and the audience that that has tended to be an issue in the hotel space. The archaic method of receiving the fax, but it does work today, and we continue to work with technology providers like Grasp and trying to bring that to the future of just inserting these virtual cards and not having to have the supporting fax, but the way that Grasp has designed it with the fax, to the hotel, but then also to the traveler, has really made a difference, at check-in and with some of those, nagging, persistent issues in the industry.
All right, thanks, Jim and Dave. Is it possible to provide consolidated daily reporting for multiple countries for air, hotel, and car? What limitation would there be on consolidated daily reporting? Ralph is asking.
It is possible, but it depends on the source. If you're using virtual cards for your card spend, that makes it really easy. Regular credit card, you have to wait till the statement comes out. So it might be 30 days later, and then you use that statement file of that data. TMCs, yes. The expense providers, depending on the one that you use, do have APIs that you can do that with and access that data, whenever you'd like, if you want to do it real time, daily, whatever. But as a lot of data goes through the TMC, that's the place that a lot of people start. And it's absolutely possible to get daily data from TMCs. In fact, our preferred, really our standard at Grasp is that we want data daily, if not real time. And we've got unique ways that we do that. But there's a lot of best practices around that. So it is possible. It can be challenging in some areas of the world. It takes a partnership. It takes that agency also working very closely with you. But it has been done, and it continues to be done today.
We have a question about, do you have the ability to use a credit card for China?
Jim, I'll turn it to you.
So this is Jim. So there's a couple things to consider in terms of global cards. So the cards it's a MasterCard brand that WEX issues specifically, and it's available wherever MasterCard or is used wherever MasterCard's accepted. So that's globally in over 200 countries. APAC being one of those regions that we see a lot of spend. The other piece of it, though, is, and this may be more to the question, is if you have local issuance and settlement capability, because those are two different things. So as an example, if I'm a U.S. company and I currently have a corporate card program, I'm going to have a U.S.-based BIN or a U.S.-based card with MasterCard. So if I travel internationally, I may pay in a different currency, which MasterCard supports, but I'm going to be charged for MasterCard what's called a cross-border and a currency conversion fee. And it varies by issuer because MasterCard charges a certain amount and most issuers mark that up. So as an example, if I do a $100 hotel room in the UK and I'm paying in the euro, I'll be billed in US dollars, but I'll be charged, let's say, a 3% fee for MasterCard. So instead of $100, I'm paying $103 for that hotel room, and that's just a cost of doing business globally. If your issuer has the capability of issuing in the local with a local bin in the local currency, you remove that cross-border and currency conversion fee. So if you have an issuer that's global and could have issued in the euro and settled in the euro, then that 3% fee goes away. So the programs that are available today are global. It's just if your issuer local issuing and settlement capabilities to help reduce the costs for you. And WEX has over 22 different currencies, and we continue to add. And some of those are in the APAC region as well. So that's a question you'd really have to sit down with your issuer and go through. But these are global programs that can be utilized as such.
Sean?
Are we still on?
Hi,
Did I
I'm
lose
sorry.
everybody?
I'm sorry about that. So I was wondering if Dave, could you please address how Grass, Pay, and virtual cards are integrated into Concur?
Yeah, so again, and this is probably a bigger conversation, so if you're interested, reach out to us. We're happy to take you through it. We're, again, living outside the ecosystem, so we're independent. This is the first of the booking tools, obviously. We work with the profile, so it's it's done in the profile level. We replenish the cards basically in real time, so that as one's used, another one comes off the top and is available, and then is basically triggered at the point of sale the way any traveler going through the booking process would trigger using the card. It obviously is there's more to it than that, but at the high level, that's how we're doing it. So it ends up being touchless, it ends up being seamless, and you don't have to change the workflow for travelers using the solution.
Thanks, Dave. Stuart is asking that it sounds like to centralize data, you need to get good integration with the booking platform or platforms. Does the solution mean open booking, book where you wish, is a bad policy concept?
No, look, let's. I think Concur did a really good job years ago of really bringing light to open booking, but it's been a problem that's been around since travel's been around, right? So people have always booked outside the system, and they're always going to continue to. If you look at those three buckets that we talked about at the minimum, TMC, credit card, and expense, if somebody's booking outside a program, it's going to fall in one of those three buckets, right? If they don't book at the TMC, then maybe it's on the company card. If they don't use the company card and they use their own card, they are sure going to expense it because they want to be paid back. So it's going to be on expense. So if you consolidate those three, you essentially capture all of your open bookings and everything. So you don't miss the spend. The question will be is what the detail of the spend that you're going to get is, and that's determined by how the systems are set up. So depending on what a corporation has obviously defined in the expense system to be captured, depending on the card that you use or the provider that you use for it and the merchant, right? One of the things that we really wanted to do was give the most robust data set around cards. And so being at that point of sale with the virtual card and being able to grab basically all the data surrounding that transaction at the point of sale really made a difference for getting a lot more data surrounding the card transaction that really wasn't being available before. So, but those three buckets, if you bring them together, have all the data of a spend in a program.
All right, thank you, Dave. Marsha's asking, what pushback do you see from hotels who still want their own credit card authorization form completed, even though they have the facts of the other transaction?
I can say on the grass side, we released this solution last year, and we haven't really had. I mean, we're growing 100+% a month on average on this solution in volume and everything else. It continues to really, grow very, very steadily, and we really haven't had an issue where we're seeing that yet. Jim, I don't know if you've ran into that with Expedia Priceline or anything like that, but it seems like that's becoming a lot less of a problem.
Yeah, it's typically becoming a lot less of a problem. There are still the outliers that are there, and I know from a WEX standpoint, we work with each of our clients. So if there is a supplier or a hotel property that has some specific requirements, sometimes we'll contact them directly or work with the client to see what we can do. Issuers do have capability to potentially change templates or formats for different, fax types. So it really depends on the issuer. But again, we see that less and less out in the marketplace today.
Okay, we have a question from Caroline. How can this solution help the travel buyers answer the direct booking issue? 2016 seems to be the year of B2C in business travel, with Hilton's Stop Clicking Around campaign and a lot of efforts to get, business and corporate travelers to book direct. How can this solution help get people in compliance and for control?
Well,
So Dave, I'll let you
go
touch
ahead.
on that, but just real quick from a WEX standpoint is obviously leveraging a virtual card, whether you're booking through a TMC or through some type of channel. If you go direct to the hotel, if the corporate is providing the payment tool by issuing a virtual card, you are setting controls for that specific booking. So within those bookings, what you do is manage your configurations to your corporate policy. So if somebody's requesting a hotel, maybe your corporate policy says, you need approval for any hotel stay over X amount. And there's capabilities within the technology and configurations to allow those things to happen. So it can mirror or really help in the travel policy. So even if you're not going through the TMC, some of those controls can be set, via the virtual card. So I just wanted to throw that in, Dave, and I'm sure you'll have some comments on that.
No, that's kind of where I was going to go. With the virtual card systems, there is basically a back end to them that allows you to create a card and be able to use it for whatever you want. It's a little different than using, obviously, at the point of sale, such as a booking tool or a GDS or something like that, which is obviously still prevalent. I think that's a challenge that's going to be solved over time as those direct connects become more available to be able to integrate with a solution like a GrassPay or virtual card. Right now, it's kind of I create the card, give it to the person to use, or use it on behalf of the person for that transaction, and that is obviously not ideal, right? So the future will be is really how do we start to work more closely with those direct connects, the ones that are getting more prevalent. So I think that's still I still think that's still an area that will need work on anyone who's doing these solutions in the market. There really isn't a full integrated solution for that at this point.
What about car rentals? Does this work for car rentals? We've got a couple people asking.
Right now with GrassPay, we are focused air and hotel. We are bringing along car and rail. Car is even a little different than even hotels, right? You're going to fax a car. They're even in some cases more archaic than hotels are in some cases. Where it can work very easily is if you're prepaying for the car up front. That's a little easier to do because you're prepaying up front and it's done. It's one and done. But it's when you have to send that virtual card, it needs to be held on file until the person brings the car back and it's charged and stuff. That's the challenge of working out the workflow and how that's going to work. And so car and rail are next for us. We're actually pretty deep into car right now. So look for announcements on capabilities around that as the year goes on.
All right, very helpful. Thank you. We have a question from Jagdish about whether the virtual card fits into IATA reconciliation and settlement process.
Jim, do you want to take that?
So I think I'd need to understand that question a little bit more, but assuming you're using the virtual card in that payment flow, it should work just like a regular corporate card that you would use today. So when you ask if it fits into the IATA settlement process, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that.
There have been no problems that I have seen with IATA or even ARC or any of that settlement process from a North American standpoint. There haven't been any issues. It works just like a normal credit card. Follows all the same rules and all that sort of thing. Follows, it's even more compliant actually from a security and fraud standpoint. So that has not been something we've run into at all yet.
And I'd also say, Dave, that it's not as though when a virtual card is sent to a supplier that they really know whether it's a virtual card, a static card, a consumer card, a corporate card. It's just a credit card number
to
the supplier. So when that's inserted into the workflow, there's no way or for it to be identified as anything other than a credit card.
Right.
So it should work in all those flows.
That's why I said I haven't seen any issues around it or heard of any.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, one last question here, because we've run out of time, unfortunately. And this refers back to our poll question, where we found that about half of the listeners today said that the biggest obstacle that they're facing is that the data isn't available in one system. And Jim, you mentioned that with the right virtual card program, you sort of can gain control and compliance. Can you explain in a little more detail how a virtual card can create a one-to-one reconciliation between a reservation ID and a virtual card, and how that helps with getting everything in one system?
Sure, I can definitely do that, and I'll ask Dave to touch a little bit more specifically on the grass pay, but just in general concept. So, from a WEX virtual card process, we can capture up to 15 user-defined fields. So a lot of our clients, depending on what they're looking to accomplish, could put cost center as one of those. You could have the employee ID. You could, put in the reservation, some hotel information, check-in, check-out date. So there's 15 data elements that you can enter in when the virtual card's requested. So once that virtual card goes through the MasterCard network and post, not only will WEX have the regular card network information on the supplier, as an example, Marriott, and it was, posted on this date for X amount, you're also going to have appended to that those 15 user-defined fields. So specifically that charge was for, X booking with all of that other detail. So it makes it a one-to-one match. And, based on what type of ERP system you have or what type of reconciliation, there's ways that you can take that data and then, have some type of file feed to help automate the reconciliation process. So you don't have to go through these statements and, try to figure out what all these charges are for. It's all pretty much done right there. And in addition, within the system, you set certain controls that you want cards to be considered reconciled if they are within a certain threshold. So if you expected, a $200 charge for this booking and you allowed a, 5% variance for, tax differences, and the charge comes in at $201, we would consider that reconciled. So we'd close out that card and consider it reconciled. Now, if the charge came back for $100, then we would keep that open, and that would be identified to you as, a transaction that you might want to look at. Are you expecting the hotel to charge more, or did they drop one of the days' stay? And then you might want to close that out. So it just really brings it a one-to-one match. So again, we could go into a lot more detail, but hopefully that's enough of an overview to give you at least an idea on how that concept works.
And every single night, WEX gives GrassPay a reconciliation file that we then take and put into reconciliation reporting for you. So every night you're getting reconciled transactions. And so you have that at your fingertips. And then on top of that, if you want to merge that with other data, TMC data, expense, and so on, we do all that. We line it all up. We normalize across it. We tie it all together so that you can have that inclusive view of what's happening, so you really can see the true cost of a trip and all the spend around it and all that sort of thing. That's Grass bread and butter. That's what we're known for. It's what we've done for 20 years. So that's the reporting and analytics side is all part of that. And so if you're interested in learning more about how we can help with any needs in that area, please reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jim. Time is a factor, so we have to wrap up. But you did see in the slides there the email addresses for both Jim and Dave, and also for Gene at T News, when we can pass along any additional questions you may have to the presenters. We recorded today's webinar, and we'll make a replay available to you along with the slides within about a day's time, depending on time difference. Please share the link to the webinar and the slides and all the little details with your colleagues to help sell the case in-house on developing an optimal payment strategy solution. I would like to thank everyone, our presenters. I'd like to thank WEX for joining us today, and for everyone around the world. We hope you have a good evening, day, or night.